Rev up your engines!
All right, here we go. Volkswagen and BMW were just fined $1 billion for running an emissions cartel, say the Europeans. Now, they're being fined $1 billion for colluding to hold back the development of technology that could have reduced emissions. So the Europeans are now fining them $1 billion for not working hard enough to do something. So they got fined for something they didn't do. Hey, if everybody got fined for things they didn't do, nobody would have any money left, except the people who collected the fines. Basically, they're saying they had all these meetings, they talked about emissions, but that they didn't use their technology to its full potential to clean better than what is required by law. They were doing what was required by law, but now the Europeans say, well, you should have tried harder and fined them $1 billion. Well, we're going to the topsy-turvy world again, you know? I mean, like saying to your kid, you could have done better in school, you know, we're going to fine you. Hey, you didn't get straight A's, you didn't get A pluses, you're not trying hard enough. Well, that's Europe for you. Hey, I agree with the Brits entirely with their leaving the European Union. They wanted to get away from all the rules and controls of Europe, taking it all over. And, all for the Brits leaving them. I think that was a smart move. Britain's bad enough as it is. Everybody's living on something like 67% of the people live on some form of public assistance. I mean, it's not that bad. At least they had enough sense to get away from the Europeans. They're finding people for things that, hey, they should have done a better job. They abided by the law, but they didn't go further. And now they got to pay $1 billion fine. I won't be moving to Europe anytime soon, I'll tell you that. You can tell the world's gone topsy-turvy, everything's upside down. Ford, but this big deal out, they hired a new lawyer, a senior Amazon employee, in their latest high-profit hire. Okay, they're not worried about hiring engineers and people to design a car. They're worried about hiring lawyers. That kind of says it all. He was a former general counsel to the U.S. Department of Energy. So he's a lawyer for the government. Ties in with the government, all that hoopla nonsense that's going on. He's an expert in regulatory law. How about getting some experts in building cars, you know? They've really lost their minds. Now, his expertise includes regulatory compliance, foreign investment, litigation involving public bodies, investigation, and government counseling over policy. Hey, how about just building cars right, you know? I mean, old Henry be rolling in his grave. Now, Henry Ford, if you know anything about the guy, he was not politically correct. He went over to Germany before World War II, and he kind of said he liked what they were doing, organizing things. He was not a politically correct guy. I don't think he cared about any of this politically correct lawyer hoopla. Now they're bragging about they hired a guy who used to work for the government. Politics and cars, I don't think they go together, you know? And recently, their CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, hired a man called John Huntsman, who was a diplomat before for the United States. And then they hired Laura Dove, who was a former aide to Mitch McConnell. She's a lobbyist. Build cars, don't lobby, just build cars right, you know? You're having a lot of problems with building cars. Why not put all your emphasis on building them right, not hiring lawyers, especially if it's a litigation lawyer. I guess they figure they screw up so much they need litigation lawyers to deal with public problems. Come on, build them right, you know? Yeah, Henry Ford was not politically correct, but he made pretty good cars, you know? The world's going in the wrong direction if you ask me. Chevy's Junkyard says, I got a 97 Mitsubishi 300 GT. The cluster always reads 0. I replaced the speed sensor, didn't work. What can I do? Well, you replace the sensor and it's not working. Either the wiring from the sensor to the dash is bad, or more often, it's your dash. I worked on enough of those things to know when they're that old. 1997, so it's what? 25 years old. That's an old car. Your dash is broken. Now, those things are so expensive. Try to go to a junkyard, see if you can find a new dash unit. I've done that. Usually they'll sell you one for 50, 60 bucks for some old car like that and put it in, and then it should work perfectly fine. But of course, who's to say how long that'd last, because it is a really old car and that'll probably break too. But that's what it is. On the other hand, you got a modern cell phone. Just use Google Maps. when it's running, it shows your speed, and it's extremely accurate. When I drove from Rhode Island back here to Tennessee a couple months ago, hey, my wife said, look, it's showing how fast you're going, and it was more accurate than our speedometer. I knew our speedometer was off somewhat, and it turns out that I had to be going 72 miles an hour on my speedometer to be actually going 70. And my other car, I know, is the other way, and I tried it, and lo and behold, it said I was doing 71 when the speedometer said it was doing 70. So they're extremely accurate. So use your phone or get a cheap old phone and stick it on a dash. You could use that for your speedometer if you want. Modern technology goes on. But you probably have to replace the dash unit. You can't buy a speedometer itself. You buy the whole thing. Nobody sells any of those things anymore for something that old. And they're expensive anyway. So try a junkyard if you want to try to fix it. Cody93 says, will switching from full to semi-synthetic oil cause acceleration loss? I got a 2012 Fusion. I want to switch from full synthetic to semi-synthetic, but I'm worried I'll lose acceleration power. Well, don't worry about anything, okay? The only thing that affects your acceleration is the actual viscosity of the oil. So let's say you're going from 0W20 synthetic to 0W20 semi-synthetic. It's not going to make any difference at all. It's the same viscosity. Now, you don't want to use a heavier weight oil if you went to like a 10 weight 10W30 instead of a 020. It's a heavy oil and you'd lose a bit of acceleration, but it's so tiny. You know, the only people that give a crap about that are the guys at Formula One racing. When they do the testing, the trial runs, they use a heavier oil with an older engine so it'll last longer, and in the race, they use the newest engines that they have and put the lightest weight oil to have the best acceleration. But as long as your viscosity is the same, it makes no difference at all on your acceleration because it's the same viscosity oil, and that's the friction. It's the same friction, so it'll have the same acceleration. A heavier oil would have a little more friction, so it would accelerate a little bit slower. But unless you're in a Formula One race, you're really not going to care all that much. You wouldn't even notice it probably. Johnny ETX says, should I sell my truck while the market is high? I got a 2016 Tacoma for 19 grand. Now, I can sell it for more money, but should I sell it? What do you think? What do you need to drive? You know, it's like people say, hey, I can sell my house now for a lot of money. Yeah, where are you going to live? You're going to buy another house? It's going to go for a lot of money too. You got a nice Tacoma, it's a 4x4. I'd say keep it forever if you want a truck that you can drive forever. Don't piddle over making a little money here or there, because you're going to have to buy something else. Now, on the other hand, if you're joining the Army or you're going on a worldwide vacation for 5 years, go ahead and sell it and get the money. But you got to drive something, and unless you got a deal on another car or you have an extra vehicle, don't waste your time because you're going to have to buy another. And it's going to be expensive, and you got one of the best trucks in the world. Why get rid of something that's good just to make a little bit of money if you're going to have to buy something else? Palsy says, what is Honda Australia doing? Honda Australia is now planning to increase their profit in Australia by having a number of dealers only selling high profit models and having fixed price with no discounts. I don't think I'll buy another Honda in Australia. Why are they doing this? Well, the reason they're doing it is because they don't care much about Australia. To them, it's a small market. So they want to make as much money that they possibly can. Hey, and maybe they're mad at you guys for beating them in World War II, too. So who knows what's going on there? You're basically a very small market to them, and they don't care about you. They care about the United States. It's huge. They care about China. It's huge. But they really don't care about you because you don't buy all that many cars. So they just don't care. It's an economic decision. They want to make as much as they possibly can, and they really don't care if you don't like it because you're not that much of their market, so it's not something that they're interested in. It's kind of stupid on their behalf, really. I mean, they lose loyalty and all that, but you're so small, they really don't care about you. Imagine what they must think of a place like Iceland, where there's only a few 100,000 people living on the whole place. But basically, they're snubbing you, so if you want to snub them, don't buy their cars. Buy Toyotas instead. They're just as well made, if not better. Jason Voorhees says, I got an '09 Ford 250. When I accelerate, I get a ticking noise on the right rear side. What could it be? Generally, that means you got bad hydraulic lifters on that side. Now, it's an '09, relatively old. If it only does it when you accelerate and then it doesn't otherwise, personally, I'd live with it. You might try some lifter cleaner. There's companies out there like K&W that have lifter cleaner. You follow the directions on the lifter cleaner stuff, and then you change your oil and filter afterwards and put in full synthetic oil because it flows better. And the ticking might go away. Sometimes the lifters have tiny little holes in them, and sometimes the holes get clogged up. stop. That cleans it out. And then a really good synthetic oil flows better, and it might stop it. If it does, great. You can thank Scotty. If it doesn't, personally, I'd live with it, because lifters can make noise in Fords and still go for years and years and years. And if it's only doing when you accelerate, I wouldn't particularly worry about it all that much. But try the lifter cleaner, change the oil, put in synthetic oil, and if it goes away, hey, you fixed it by just a little cleaner and then changing your oil. Fords are notorious for lifter tick as they age. A lot of people just live with it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.